Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive.
Quite frankly, I get most of my news from you.
Joan Esposito.
Y'all ready for this?
On WCPT 820.
Hello, my friends. It is Thursday, December 12th. I hope you are having an absolutely spectacular day. We are opening up the phone lines for the first hour of our show, 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. You can call me, you can text me. For the first hour, you and I are going to talk, and then we're going to be joined by political science professor William Muck. You should also know that when I take a little bit of time off for the holidays, since I was sick with COVID and unconscious over Thanksgiving, I'm going to try again to take vacation, actual vacation, and not, barely conscious, can't get out of bed time. I'm sorry, I digress. William Muck is going to be here the Monday and the Friday, the Monday before Christmas, the Friday after Christmas, and he is going to be hosting. So let's give him I know he's done it before and he's done a great job, but so that means that if you want, we can keep the phone lines open for the first 2 hours of the show. I'm sure Bill is going to be more than happy to take your calls. Yeah, theoretically, I probably should have asked him about it, but what the heck? He can roll with the punches, right? Okay. 773-763-9278. Lady B is ready and waiting and eagerly sitting there, hoping that you will give her a call and that she can chat with you. In the meantime, I was going to mention this yesterday and ran out of time. Did you see? Now, the Republicans in Congress, a lot of them are bat poop crazy. They really are. I mean, Mike Johnson can't get anything done because the Democrats won't agree to anything that's crazy. And his far right wing doesn't want him to do anything that's not crazy. So pretty much nothing gets done. And the Republicans in Congress, how can I say this without using any bad words? There are Republicans in Congress who do not seem to care about doing anything positive. Not only that, but apparently at least 29 of them want to undo some of the stuff that is positive. 29 House Republicans have told Mike Johnson that they want to put together some kind of a measure. You know how when you go to file your taxes, if you don't hire somebody to do it, if you're going to do it yourself, through the IRS, you can do it electronically. You can do it on your computer, and you can do that for free. It's sponsored by Intuit, and sometimes there have been criticisms in the past that Intuit makes it very unclear which button to push for the free service as opposed to hiring Intuit. But you can go online and file your taxes for free. 29 House Republicans don't think that's a good idea, and they want that free option to be removed. Why? Well, why? Well, this is the kind of thing that we're going to see more and more of. If it's good for consumers, if it saves you money, but it doesn't make money for the Republicans' corporate overlords, then they are going to try to get rid of it. If they get rid of free e-file, what are you going to do? You're probably going to end up paying a company like Intuit. And this is why we're going to see tons of deregulation, because corporations know that they can, with their lobbying dollars, get regulations rolled back, restrictions eased, if not eliminated, so that they can make more money. Is that going to benefit you? What do you think? Is it going to benefit you, or are we going to end up spending more money for the bottom line? You know? That's why when you hear Republicans talking about privatizing Social Security, well, that's because they want their insurance buddies to make more money. Everything is going to be designed to benefit someone. And the idea being that if enough of those corporations are making money, that they are going to be writing those big checks to Republican lawmakers. See how that works? And the only way that process is going to be slowed or stopped is by voters. If you are in a district and you are represented by a Republican, fine, you're a Republican too. That's great. But pay attention to what they're voting for and what they're voting against. And if you've got a Republican representative in Congress who is voting in a way that's going to make life more difficult and more expensive for you, you might just want to call that congressperson's office. There was one political organization that I follow, and, because you can do so much of this stuff just with your phone. And they said if you're not making at least one call every week to a lawmaker, you're not doing your job. So we all need to start paying more attention. My representative used to be Jan Schakowsky, now it's Brad Schneider, and I didn't like, there was House Bill 9495, the one that critics are saying would give Donald Trump, if it's passed by the Senate, it's going to give Donald Trump the power to declare a nonprofit, terrorist-related or terrorist-adjacent organization and shut them down. And it's believed that it will have a chilling effect. And I called Brad Schneider's office and I said, I know Congressman Schneider voted yes on this earlier, but I would love to see him change that vote to a no. Sadly, my phone call did not result in Congressman Schneider changing his vote. But I did get a delightful, is it 3 or 4? 3-page letter from Brad Schneider explaining why he voted the way he voted, which I thought was really interesting. And he believes that the fears about this resolution are being exaggerated. And he points out that there are some good parts of the bill, and that's why he voted for it. And he doesn't believe that, as the critics say, that this will give Donald Trump the power to just go after any organization that he perceives as not working in his interest. I'm not sure I agree with Congressman Schneider. I appreciate the letter, which I plan to hang on to. And, if it turns out he's right and Donald Trump does not attempt to weaponize this, then, hats off to him. If it doesn't turn out that way, Congressman Schneider is going to be hearing from me again. Because, I think he's hoping for the best. And while I guess I admire that, I don't know. I just think that rather than crossing our fingers and hoping for the best, oh, no, that bill doesn't do that. That'll never happen. I hope to God he's right. But, even if Donald Trump doesn't exercise this power, the very fact that it exists, don't you think that's going to affect the way some of these NGOs and nonprofits function for fear that they will come into Donald Trump's crosshairs? Anywho, I had my say. The congressman responded, If it turns out he's right, I will call his office again and say, okay. If it turns out he's wrong, he's not heard the last of me. That's what we should all be doing. I want to share with you some of the things that newsmakers are saying. But first, we should take a real quick break before we get into the rest of our hour. We will be right back after this.
There's no excuse to miss Joan Esposito.
It's number one on my stereo.
Live, local, and progressive. You can listen to her daily at WCPT820.com on your computer or phone. Driving it home with Patty Vasquez.
It is, I guess, hard on my ears when I hear someone say the Democrats don't really do rage, right? But we should, because the things that they are outraged by, the conservatives, is when somebody gets something they think they deserve or they think something is being taken away from them. And the people that are taking it away from you are the Republicans and the ultra-wealthy.
Patty Vasquez. Weeknights 5 to 7 on WCPT 820.
WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter.
Joan Esposito. Join the conversation now at 773-763-9278.
I'm trying to use the phone!
Joan Esposito. Live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
There's a lot of stuff that I want to share with you, stuff about Tulsi Gabbard and Pete Hegseth, and some of the stuff Jamie Raskin's been saying. But before we get to that, I want to clarify in case my rant of earlier wasn't clear earlier in the week. I have a real bone to pick with CNN when they cover crime stories, because it seems to me that the vast amount of their attention is spent on crime stories that either involved white, blonde, blue-eyed women or powerful white men, as in the fact when they were covering the murder of Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare, I keep CNN on to make sure that I don't miss any breaking news. I swear to you, they were doing a story on this murder like 4 times an hour. I mean, it was really, really overkill. And CNN will do that. They'll have a crime story that they latch onto and just pummel us. And in my observation, that rarely happens when it is a person of color. But CNN seems to really like it if there's a white person in trouble. And somebody took me to task in the text line. And I want to be clear that I'm not saying that I think news organizations across the board do this, but I think it is a real weakness at CNN. And it drives me crazy. So I am not saying that every news organization does this. I think there are many news organizations that are much more balanced when it comes to crime. So, CNN, I like a lot of the people on it. I don't know who's making these calls. I can tell you that maybe Rachel Maddow and somebody who's powerful decides exactly what's going to be in their show. But for the most part, I think the anchors on CNN, while they certainly can weigh in on a story, they are not the ones making the decisions. You know, maybe Jake Tapper has a little bit of sway. He's considered, at least during the day, one of their most powerful people. Probably Anderson Cooper can weigh in. Mr. $25 million a year, Anderson Cooper, can weigh in on what stories he does and doesn't want. But for the most part, there are managers in the newsroom that organize exactly what stories are going to be covered, when they're going to air, and what copy the news anchors are going to be reading. So get over yourself, CNN. Okay, I want to share with you something from Jamie Raskin. Jamie Raskin was on MSNBC and was being asked about the future of the Democratic Party. And I think this is something that we need to listen to and take to heart. We are Democrats, except for those of you who listen to my show. I don't know, because I make you mad. I don't know. But we need to come together. We need to work. We need to have a vision, and we need to resist. We need to refuse. I thought that what Jamie Raskin said on CNN was terrific, and Lady B is going to share that with you right now.
Well, look, we lost an election by around 3 million votes. Joe Biden had beaten Donald Trump 4 years before that by more than 7 million votes. So obviously the country is closely divided. And so we're going to alter some tactics and strategies and figure out how the right has captured a lot of the social media. And I think we have been outflanked there. There was nothing wrong with the massive ground game and the door knocking and the canvassing that took place in the election. But there are clearly some changes that need to be made. We're not going to change our values. We're not going to abandon American constitutional democracy because we lost an election by 1% or 1.5%. We're not going to abandon the rule of law. We're going to be recruiting and mobilizing hundreds of thousands and millions of more people to get out there and be leaders in this fight. What else can we do? This is not a game of volleyball or badminton where we're going to, quit the game or something. I mean, this is the fight of our lives that we're in now.
There you go. We are in the fight of our lives. And the good news is that there's every reason to believe that in the upcoming midterm elections that the Democrats will have a chance to regain some power. Remember when Donald Trump was elected the first time, he also had a Republican Congress and a Republican majority in the Senate by much bigger numbers. Luckily, he didn't know what he was doing, so that that advantage kind of went to waste for him. But this time the margins are much tighter. And the next time we have Senate elections in 2026, this time around, more Republicans than Democrats will have to defend their seats, which gives us a real opportunity. I was talking about earlier how there are Republican Congress people who want to take away your ability to e-file your taxes for free. Oh, that's the tip of the iceberg. Somebody just texted in a social media post from the Philadelphia Independent and a similar post from Reuters news organizations. And I'm saying this because I want you to know these are credible sources. Already, the U.S. pharmaceutical industry wants Donald Trump to take away the right of Medicare to negotiate prices for drugs. Every private health insurance company in the United States negotiates drug prices. You know, Blue Cross Blue Shield says, Pfizer, you want to charge $1,000 for this drug. Well, we've got 10 gazillion users who potentially could buy that drug. But if you want us to buy it, you're not going to charge us that price. We'll pay you $200 instead. And you know what the drug companies do most of the time? They say, okay, because they know they don't want to give up that volume, and they know that they will still make money. Well, by law, Medicare was denied the right to negotiate. So if Pfizer wanted to charge $1,000 a dose for something, Medicare had to say, okay, all righty. It was a windfall for Big Pharma. They didn't have to cut Medicare, even though there's millions of us on Medicare. They didn't have to cut Medicare any breaks. Joe Biden changed that, and Big Pharma is already lobbying They are already lobbying the incoming administration to get rid of that provision. Oh, you know how Biden said that Medicare could negotiate with us? Oh, that's not good for anybody. What do you mean it's not good for anybody? Well, it's not good for us. We won't make nearly as much money if that happens. Yep. A couple of you on the text line are talking about House Bill 9495. Somebody said they also contacted Brad Schneider about it. I hope I don't have a name. I just have a phone number for you. And I hope that you got a letter like I did. So somebody, Larry in Wheeling, it's funny, Larry in Wheeling said he was redistricted over to Jan Schakowsky. I was redistricted from Jan Schakowsky to Brad Schneider. But Larry from Wheeling is saying that the district that Brad Schneider represents is one that has not always been solidly Democratic. So their argument to me is that Brad Schneider, maybe more so than Jan Schakowsky or Mike Quigley, Brad Schneider has to be very aware of what the Republicans in his district think and want, and that perhaps that's why he voted the way he did. Lots of people with lots of theories. I wonder if Brad Schneider knows how popular he is. Lots of theories about why he voted the way he did. Somebody said, and, did my letter from Brad Schneider mention that he was a co-sponsor of this 94-95? I have not seen that. I'm not saying that he isn't, but it wasn't part of the letter that I got, and I have not independently confirmed that he was indeed a co-sponsor of this. So I will look into that. There's a lot more that I want to share with you when we come back. Adam Schiff, the newly minted senator from California, talking about Tulsi Gabbard. Pete Hegseth making some very interesting comments on how he feels or doesn't feel or might feel or used to feel or could feel about women in the military and combat. Chris Murphy weighing in on Donald Trump's choice to be the head of the FBI, Kash Patel. There's a lot. There's a lot that we need to get to. Plus, keep those texts coming in, 773-763-9278. Oh, Allison, you did not get a letter from Brad Schneider? Maybe I'll share a little bit about he was, it's not going to do what you've heard, and this is what it's going to do, and this is why it's great, and I hope he's right. We're going to take a break. We're going to be back with more after this.
Podcasts of Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and Amazon. Just search for Joan Esposito.
This is Chicago's Progressive Talk, 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and online at WCPT820.com, where facts matter.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
773-763-9278. I am taking your calls and texts. We are going to be joined in the 3 o'clock hour with political science professor William Muck. If you want to take part in whatever discussion we are having, feel free to continue to call. Right now, we're going to go to the phone lines. Our good friend Jim is on the line from Chicago. Hello, Jim. How are you?
Hi, Joan. I was reading a book in 1937, Moscow, and they sent some Russians to America, and for observation and the mundane things. But the one thing that stuck out to them was our word. The Americans could trust each other's word.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was interesting because that's how I live my life. I'm in my 70s now, but when I think back on it, the people's word that I took, my word, I wanted to live up to my word, and they lived up to their word. And
well, that's old-fashioned.
No, I know it is because people.
It's like we're creatures from another part of history. I'm sorry. Who are you? Did you time travel here from like the 1940s or 50s?
Yeah, I think so. But I mean, it's just something that's. Is it evaporated or what, Joan? I hate to be silly about it, but I mean, it seems like it's evaporated. I mean, look at the situation we're in. A congenital liar is president of the United States. A guy that denies the election running for FBI director. I mean, the whole thing is beyond belief.
Yeah, it really is. I was thinking about that this morning, Jim, because like I said, somebody I know and see reasonably regularly was very matter of fact. I'm a Republican. I've always been a Republican, and I voted for Trump because prices are just too high. And I was thinking about that this morning. So this is a guy who assaulted E. Jean Carroll in a dressing room. This is a guy who's a convicted felon. This is the guy who laid the groundwork for Roe v. Wade being overturned and is proud of it and may get around to a federal abortion ban. This is a guy who has lied, cheated, and stolen, who's been convicted of fraud. But yeah, paper towels are too expensive. You go with that. Paper towels are too expensive. I don't get it.
Yeah, but I don't need. But Joan, there must be some methods that are madness. I can't understand what they think they're going to get out of Trump. What do they think he's going to deliver for them? He was brutal in his first administration. Let's face it. How many thousand people died because he wouldn't own up to the fact that we were in a pandemic? I mean, he's such a liar.
And I don't understand why that doesn't enter into the equation.
No, I don't either.
Prices are too high. I'm a Republican, so I'm voting for Trump. Okay.
Right.
I hope those. First of all, there's no guarantee that paper towels are going to be cheaper under Trump. A lot of the rest, if he puts those tariffs in place, a lot of what you buy is going to be more expensive. But yeah, okay, you're a lifelong Republican. You go with that, and I don't understand. It's like people have blinders on.
Yeah, or something, or some motive that I don't even know. I can't assign a motive to it because he was such a horrible president, and to vote for him again is just unbelievable. First of all, he should be disqualified for not admitting that we had a pandemic. Wait 2 months to even tell us about. Who would, if you were president, Joan, and you came across your desk in the morning, there's a pandemic that might be lethal to people in America. Wouldn't you breathe a word? Wouldn't you go on TV and say,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, but they voted for him.
And if one of his aides. If Hope Hicks had come to him and said, I think the way we handle this, you could make the American people fall in love with you, and it wouldn't require anything but you going out and going how much you care about people and how much you're going to protect people and how serious this is and how, you gave them the vaccine. Instead, he took it as like a personal insult. Remember, he didn't want that cruise ship to dock because it was filled with COVID patients? And he said the numbers, if we let them off that ship, the numbers will go up? I mean...
but the whole Republican Party took that stance. They tried to say that Fauci was a mastermind, a criminal that wanted to kill everybody. That was all over the internet. I mean, they took the stance, this anti-scientific stance that they're taking again with everything else. But to what end? I mean, to what end? So Exxon can make more money and the drug companies can make more money? Anyway, Joe, I just had to mention it because that's what I live by your word. I mean, my jobs and the guy's word or the woman's word, that's what we live by. You know what I mean, Joan?
I think in our personal lives, We do live that way. At least most of us live that way. And I think, this even people who have voted for Trump, I've been reading more and more, and it's just they don't believe that the worst will happen. They believe him when he says things like he's the father of in vitro fertilization, and abortion is just going to be a matter for the states, and they believe all this. And I don't know. I think it's naive, but.
Well, yeah, but didn't you say your son's doing software and his wife's a teacher? Now, I don't want to put this onus on them, but we have to get better information into the internet.
Well, I told you, or I don't know if you were listening that day. She teaches middle school in Chicago in the school is largely African American, and very early on in the election season, she asked her students how they thought that their parents were going to vote. And she heard, we're going to vote for Trump because last time he was in office, he sent us money. Remember how Nancy Pelosi wanted there to be checks for people to get through COVID? And Donald Trump held that money up for 2 weeks so the checks could be reprinted with his name on it. And then when Joe Biden did the same thing, he didn't put his name on the checks. And even Biden made a comment, was it this week? He was talking to somebody, and he said, that was a really stupid thing I did, how I didn't put my name on the checks.
Right. But we have to get, Jamie Raskin said it, the internet, it's got to be the Democratic, it has to be a 50-50 information thing where we show what the Democrats have done over the years and what they've done for the public and so on and so forth. Instead of this baloney that we're enemies of the state and we're commies or whatever you. And these words, but they've gone, Joan, you know it and I know it. We're in 2024. I thought we would be going, civilization would be going for higher goals, rather than this infighting. But anyway, Joan, thanks. You have a great show. Thank you, Joan. Thank you,
Jim. I want to, before we go back to the phone lines, I want to share with you, Adam Schiff was interviewed on cable TV, and he was asked about what he thought about Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard's name hasn't gotten as much attention as Pete Hegseth or Kash Patel, at least not as much attention recently. But she is every bit as dangerous, possibly more so. There are some, even Republicans in government, who think that she has a very inappropriate relationship with Russia. Some of them call her an asset. Anyway, Adam Schiff, the new senator from California, was on with Lawrence O'Donnell and told us what he thinks about the confirmation process for Tulsi Gabbard. Listen to this.
How will you approach her confirmation in the Senate? Well, I certainly want to hear her out. I want a thorough background check done of her record. The things that concern me, though, may be hard to overcome. One of them is she has a complete lack of experience in intelligence matters. She never even served on the Intelligence Committee, never served within the community itself, never served with any of the agencies. I don't think she had any intel role in the military when she served in the military. This is a job with a very steep learning curve to learn all the systems, all the overhead architecture, what signals intelligence is to distinguish from geospatial, human intelligence, et cetera, all the different disciplines. But she's also shown, as you pointed out, terrible judgment in fawning over dictators like Bashar al-Assad or echoing Kremlin talking points. And this is someone who may very well be advising the President of the United States what we ought to do on issues of war and peace, how we should interpret intelligence that we're getting. And you don't want someone with bad judgment whispering in the president's ear, particularly a president that isn't particularly known for his judgment to begin with. So a lot of concerns may be difficult for her to overcome, at least with me.
So, yeah, I want to hear what she has to say. But, she's not really qualified and she's not really very bright. But I want to hear what she has to say. Okay. Let's go back to the phone lines. Dan Schaefer is on the line. You always hear him with Patty Vasquez in Driving It Home with Patty Vasquez. Dan, how are you? Thanks for calling in.
Hey, Joan, how are you doing?
I am just peachy, Dan. Just peachy.
Good. I'm glad you're going to take some time off for the holidays, actual time off for the holidays, and not be sick during the holidays. Yes.
That's my goal.
But I'm glad you recovered. I just wanted to talk about, so Donald Trump during the campaign was saying about how quickly he's going to be able to bring prices down, like you were talking about, prices of paper towels, prices of eggs, prices of which I think that was the first time the man ever went into a grocery store was when he did a commercial. But then on Meet the Press this past Sunday, he was asked about that, and he says, "Oh, well, it's not that easy just to bring things down. It's good. We can't. It's not like okay." So again, he's selling. He's selling a campaign slogan, and people fell for it. But every Republican president, at least in my lifetime, has left office with an economy in complete disarray.
Yeah.
And I was looking it up on Investopedia, and this is from, I think it was updated November 5th of this year. But George W. Bush increased the national debt by 72%. Barack Obama did by 64%, but he also inherited George W. Bush's economy. Joe Biden only increased it by 16% right now. Obviously, we're still not through his term, but he inherited Donald Trump's economy, which Donald Trump increased the national debt by 33%. And the one thing that I love about Joe Biden is, number one, I think that he deserves way more respect than he's currently getting. But all of the bills and proposals that he put through, they were budget neutral for the most part. Donald Trump's tax cuts, those were not budget neutral.
No, they were not.
They were not at all, and I think that we're going to keep feeling the effects of that. But I don't understand why people keep putting the faith of the economy in the Republicans when their track record, including Reagan. Reagan increased it by 160%.
Dan, is that our fault? Do we not pound that message home enough? Do we need to go on TikTok and start talking about it? Why don't people see what you see and what I see?
I know. My theory is the Republicans just keep spending and spending and spending, and then when the Democrats come into office, it's like, oh, no, it's the entitlement programs. We've got to start cutting Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security, which are winning topics for the majority of the country. Nobody wants their Medicare cut. I know Republicans that as soon as they turn 65 and a half, they are so excited to be on Medicare. And yet they are the ones who want to defund. They vote for the people that want to defund that program. And I think that Tom Hartman was talking about this, and he was talking about FDR. And FDR talked about what the actual middle class wanted to hear, and that was not entitlement programs, it's support programs, and it's stuff that we pay into, but if something happens to you, then you have that support system available, and we need to rephrase, I guess, like we need to take it back from the Republicans, because they have that on the chopping block, and Project 2025 is a very terrifying thing. And, I think maybe we need to refocus, I guess. I'm not sure.
It's interesting because the Democrats have much more worker-friendly, family-friendly policies, and yet the perception is somehow that Republicans are going to make things better. And
I don't get it.
There is a real gap, an information gap there. And, I've talked to people who've said, well, part of the problem is most Democrats, particularly those in elected office, when they do interviews, they talk like college professors. They don't talk like real people. And to some degree, I think that's true. I mean, you look at somebody like Katie Porter. Katie Porter is like, no, that's not right. Here, let me tell you what's right. See this? This does this. And she's clear. Yeah. And she's passionate, and she's accurate. And then you compare that, God love him. I think he's going to be a good senator, but I just played this soundbite from Adam Schiff. What do you think of Tulsi Gabbard? Well, I'm going to listen to everything she wants to say. I don't really think that she has the right experience, and I don't think she will give Donald Trump good advice. But, I think Tulsi Gabbard is a terrible pick. She's a terrible pick. She doesn't have the experience or the expertise or the intelligence to be in that job. God, why can't Democrats talk like that?
Or I would say Alliance to Our Nation to be part of the jobs, because there's questions about who should give the information.
Yes.
Also, but it's kind of like, I love watching Rachel Maddow, but at some point I'm like, all right, get to the point. Okay, let's, I think
she
that's
does
one
repeat
thing we can
herself
take from Donald Trump.
a lot.
We can take that. I think we could take that from Donald Trump. He says things simply, and he repeats it and repeats it and repeats it, and apparently it works.
Yeah.
So I think that might be something we need to do. Repeat the fact that Democrats are actually here for working families and the middle-class Americans, and just keep saying it over and over and over again, and keep it simple.
I can't remember who it was, Dan, whether it was Olivia Troy or Alyssa Farah, who's on CNN. One of them said that Donald Trump said to her, if you just keep saying something over and over again, people will start to believe it. Donald Trump said that to her directly.
A lie repeated multiple times is perceived as truth. That's basically what it is.
Yep.
And it clearly has worked for him twice now. So I'm hoping that this 4 years we can get through it. I'm very thankful for your show. I love listening to it every day, and just thank you for everything that you do.
Well, thank you. I've thought about inviting you to join me on the air, but I didn't want to make Patty mad since she has first dibs on you, Oh,
you let me know anytime. I'm totally fine. Patty is going to be fine with it, Joan. I will come on your show anytime you want.
Well, okay. All right. I'll be reaching out, Dan.
All right. Definitely. All right. Have a good holiday.
Thank you. You too. We're going to take a real quick break. We're going to be back with more calls and more interesting stuff right after this.
Take Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, with you on the go by using the TuneIn app on your phone. Just search for WCPT 820.
This is WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
We spend the first hour of the show talking to you, talking about the news of the day, taking your calls. Real quick before we get back to the phone lines, I want to share with you, somebody put this together. Pete Hegseth, the man who by many accounts has a terrible drinking problem and who has been credibly accused of rape. Yeah, there's a fine human being to be head of our military. He very controversially took the stance that he doesn't think women belong in combat. He is now trying to tell us, he never said that. What are we talking about? And somebody put together the old Pete Hegseth and the new Pete Hegseth into one little very contradictory soundbite. So let's listen to that real quick.
I'm straight up just saying we should not have women in combat roles. It hasn't made us more effective, hasn't made us more lethal, has made fighting more complicated. Our institutions don't have to incentivize that in places where not traditionally, over human history, men in those positions are more capable. I also want an opportunity here to clarify comments that have been misconstrued that I somehow don't support women in the military. Some of our greatest warriors, our best warriors out there are women.
Okay, Pete. Which Pete Hegseth is the real Pete Hegseth? Your guess is as good as mine. Let's go back to the phone lines. Our good friend Ron from Chicago is on the line. Hello, Ron. How are you?
Oh, pretty good today. Trying to keep warm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's there has been news this week about the drones flying over the East Coast.
The big drones over New Jersey.
Philadelphia, and the Republicans have a plan to solve this. They want to take away funding from the Internal Revenue Service and build radar stations. That's right.
Oh, my God. Well, they actually do want to take away funding from the IRS because the increased funding that the IRS got under the Biden administration was designed to help them have the resources necessary to go after rich people who have lots of lawyers. When the IRS goes after them, it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. And they simply, it was so much easier to go after poor people or middle-class people because they didn't fight so hard. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. I don't know if it has anything to do with the drones, but Republicans definitely want to cut the extra millions of dollars that they got under the Biden administration, even though we already know that I think it was $80 million that their budget was increased. And one report that I saw said that they have collected $1 billion in late, back due, wrong filing. They've collected $1 billion from people that otherwise would never have been collected. So it's a pretty good return on investment, you know? Call me crazy.
Yeah. No, that's the amount they mentioned, 80 million or billion from the term. Yeah. And they found the notebook from Mr. Luigi
the guy who was accused of shooting the United Healthcare CEO.
Right. And they found this notebook, and he wrote down there that and he thought about using a bomb instead of a gun, but he wrote down that he did not want to injure innocent people. Well, what a sweet, sensitive guy.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw the story in New York. Somebody has been putting up wanted posters with the names and photographs of other healthcare CEOs. You know, of course, nobody is going to condone murder or violence, but I really think the reaction to this shooting should send a message to lawmakers that people really have had enough with our healthcare system. They've had enough with being denied care and drugs and treatments that will keep them and their loved ones alive.
Yeah. What's going to happen with the price of insulin? It was at $35 now. So what's going to happen?
You know, Mark Cuban has started his own little. I think he has a drug company, an online drug company, where you don't have to go through any kind of middleman. And I believe right now there are 100 drugs that his company offers at greatly, greatly discounted prices. And a lot of people are saying that if he ran for president, he would have a lot going for him. But, how bad is our system that we have to have private citizens try to bring down the price of drugs? I mean, it's ridiculous. Thanks for the call, Ron.
Okay. All right.
I appreciate it. And I'm going to play this right now. I promised you I would play it, and I think we just have time for it. Chris Murphy. We talked about Adam Schiff and Tulsi Gabbard and Pete Hegseth, Flippy Floppy. Senator Chris Murphy was talking about Kash Patel, Trump's desired FBI head. Listen to what Chris Murphy had to say.
What do you anticipate a more emboldened, more aggrieved Trump might do? Are there any preparations in place to prevent something like this from happening again?
Well, listen, we can't completely imagine what he will do, but Kash Patel, who is his nominee to head the FBI, has made it very clear that he is going to prosecute and persecute anyone who he believes has stood in the way of Donald Trump's political agenda. One of the things he says he will do is prosecute people who tried to uphold Joe Biden's win in 2020. In other words, if you didn't try to rig the election for Donald Trump, you may soon be investigated by the FBI and perhaps prosecuted by the Department of Justice. That's how serious this can be. Now, we could hope that an independent judiciary would back us up, but there are a whole bunch of Trump sycophants that were put on the bench by President Trump during his first term who may not rule in favor of the Constitution and an individual's right to free speech. So I think this is a really scary moment, but we have the power to fight back against Kash Patel's nomination, to fight back against Pam Bondi's nomination, to expose for the American public what they are going to do if these people who are loyal to Donald Trump, not the rule of law, get into office. So people still have power right now, because if we expose them ahead of time, if we make it very clear what they're going to do, it'll make it a little bit harder for them to get away with it.
Let's hope so. We are going to take a break for news. We're going to be back with political science professor William Muck right after this.
Remember, when you get to work, to hop over to WCPT820.com or the TuneIn Radio app and stream The Stephanie Miller Show. Weekdays 8 to 11 a.m. on Chicago's Progressive Talk, where facts matter. You're listening to WCPT 820, because facts matter.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive.
The reason that I listen to you from the infamous other side, you will call a spade, and if it's indefensible, you will not defend it. And you know what? I can respect that.
On WCPT 820.
Political science professor William Muck is at North Central College. I also want you to know that not only is he here today, yay! He will also be here December 23rd, Monday, and December 27th, Friday, hosting this show as I attempt to take vacation and not get sick, which is a goal, a personal goal of mine. Are you ready? Are you ready to handle the big show, Bill?
I am so grateful and looking forward to it, Joan. It is a ton of fun. I understand the appeal. It's very addicting, when you're on the other side of the microphone. It sure is a lot of fun.
And do you get that mad sense of power?
A little bit, yes. Well, it's just, you're creating something which is really, really fun, and you have conversations with people, and over the course of the 3 hours, it really is. I mean, I have totally enjoyed filling in, and I'm so looking forward to doing it again. It really is a wonderful opportunity.
Well, you do a wonderful job, and just so you know, I'm not like traveling. I'm just trying to take the vacation that I didn't get when I was in bed over Thanksgiving. So I'm around. If I can help you out in any way, shoot me a text, and I will do. Not that you're going to need any help, because I know you've done this before, and clearly you are somebody that the station thinks does a very good job, or they would not have invited you back. So,
well, thank you so much. That's wonderful.
Yes. I would, in the first hour, I was playing different sound bites. Chris Murphy weighing in on Kash Patel, Adam Schiff weighing in on Tulsi Gabbard, for intelligence. It's almost as if these people were chosen. Obviously, they're chosen not for any experience or qualifications. They're chosen apparently for two reasons: positivity and loyalty to Trump, and the fact that many of them really look good on television. Donald Trump wants somebody who, has that look, which is why somebody wrote an article about the number of full-time or part-time Fox hosts who have been offered positions in the Trump government. And some of them are names that, I don't watch Fox, but some of them are contributors. Some of them are part-time. Some of them are full-time. But altogether, there's like 10 of them where their main qualification has been they've been supportive of Trump on Fox television. So I also thought that maybe the reason why some of these really awful people were nominated, it seemed to me that he was trying to test the Republicans and the Senate and basically see if he could just break them. This whole idea of, just go home, go into recess and let me appoint whoever I want. Don't have any hearings. Don't do any background checks. Or if we're going to do them, I'll pay a company that I know. I won't have the FBI do it. It almost seemed to me that in addition to getting loyalists in positions of power, it seemed to me he wanted to bring the Senate to its knees. I don't know. What do you think when you see these vastly unqualified human beings nominated to wield incredible power?
Yeah, no, absolutely right. This is another test for the Republican Party, and especially, as you note, Senate Republicans. And he is saying to them, do not push back. And I think we've seen this most notably with Pete Hegseth, right? We're early on, as some of the background for Hegseth started to emerge, Senate Republicans said, oh my goodness, the guy has no experience. There's all these sexual assault allegations. There's drinking problems. These are normal things. Any one of those two or three things would have ended a normal candidacy. And what we've seen is Trump putting his thumb down, saying, I want this guy to get through. And Joni Ernst and others are now sort of saying, okay, let's give him a hearing. And I think it's a sign that he has total domination of the party, and in particular Senate Republicans. So this is his chance to make it clear that there will be no checks. There will be no pushback. And Joan, it's just so upsetting, right? I mean, we can see it's sort of like a slow motion car crash. We see everything that's playing out, and we can describe what's happening, and yet the players continue to follow through. It's sort of upsetting when you think about it.
It's very upsetting. And I think what we're seeing from Joni Ernst and others isn't simply acquiescing to a hearing, but acquiescing to the nominee.
Yes.
And it really, I guess it doesn't surprise me, because I predicted all along that the Republicans in the Senate would capitulate. But then John Thune, the new majority leader in the Senate, gave me a little bit of hope when he was like, well, he was asked about the recess appointments early on. He said, I'd really rather do things the regular way. And then the way it seemed to shake out was, okay, well, we'll give you recess appointments for the jobs that we don't consider that critical, like, head of the National Labor Relations Board. But when it comes to the cabinet positions, we are going to have hearings. Those are too important for us to shirk our duty. And now, I'm wondering which among them, when they have these hearings, sure, Democrats are going to go hard against the Tulsi Gabbards of the world. But what are we going to get from the Republicans? Do they want to go on the record as really having reservations about a Donald Trump nominee? Some people have speculated that he is a lame duck president, but that at least initially, or maybe nobody wants to be primaried in the upcoming midterm elections, and that they'll sort of, kowtow to him until that comes and goes, and then maybe we will see them behave differently. What do you think about that?
Maybe. I don't know. I think Donald Trump's control of the Republican Party is pretty complete. And it's hard to know what happens after a Trump presidency, but I don't see any ending anywhere in the near future. I mean, you think about it because, as you note, the threat of the primary is so powerful. And the maybe the most disturbing part about all of this is that the Senate Republicans know better. They know that Pete Hegseth and they know Tulsi Gabbard are not legitimate nominees, right? I mean, and you talk to anybody in the national security community, they will acknowledge this. They will say, running the Defense Department is a complicated job. You have to understand running budgets, and you have to know about, alliances and security and all of these, it is a really, really complicated. Same thing for the DNI. And it doesn't mean you have to have somebody who's worked their way through, but you need somebody with executive type experience at those positions. And so Pete Hegseth is clearly not that guy. Tulsi Gabbard has all sorts of problems in terms of a security threat. I don't even think she would get a security clearance. And the idea that she's going to be the director of national intelligence, these are concerning things. And I think the concern isn't just from a partisan lens. It's from a national security lens to say the country will not be as safe with individuals like this in positions of power.
I think that the Senate Republicans were hoping that they could pressure Hegseth to drop out the way behind the scenes they pressured Gates to drop out. And I think it's very interesting that rather than capitulating, Hegseth came out and doubled down. No, I am not. I am not going to withdraw from this race. And every time I talk to Donald Trump on the phone, he tells me, I'm his guy, so I'm here to stay. So the easy road of, come on, dude, you make us all look bad. This isn't good for the party. This isn't good for Donald Trump. You got to step back. And Hegseth, not surprisingly, I mean, this is a guy who, I didn't rape that woman. I didn't drug and rape that woman. And I falling down drunk. Well, you appoint me and I'll stop drinking. Oh my God, the guy said that. Oh. You put me in this job and I promise I'll stop drinking. Not that I'm going to stop drinking now because maybe I have a problem, but only if you give me this job. I mean, it's just incredible. And I think that I think he's going to push them to supporting him.
I think you're right. And this is where the normative element comes in, right? So there's no rules that say you can't have somebody like Hegseth be as the Secretary of Defense, but the norms have always said, no, you want somebody with some experience, some expertise, somebody with not sort of devastating, character flaws in these roles. But those norms are gone away. And all that matters, as you noted earlier, is loyalty to Donald Trump and also looking the role. It doesn't matter if you're an empty suit. As long as you look good in that suit, you can be considered for that position.
Pete Hegseth refuses to back away, and yet, as near as I can tell, nobody asked Christopher Wray to resign, and he's like, okay, I'm out of here. Okay, I don't want to cause any trouble. I don't want there to be, ugliness. I don't want Donald Trump to come up with some sort of trumped-up charge why I need to be fired. I'm just going. As the day Joe Biden leaves, I'm leaving too. I don't know. I know Chris Wray's a Republican, and the idea of not going through all that trauma, and from a human standpoint, I can understand it. But from the director of the FBI, it feels to me a little cowardly. What do you think? Should he have stuck it out and been fired and dealt with that?
Yeah, I had a similar reaction, right? At a human level, I get it. Like, Christopher Wray has done a really good job in an incredibly difficult position. And I understand him not wanting to go through the process of what James Comey went through, of being publicly fired by tweet and all of that. But sometimes the institution matters more than the individual. And I think this is something where if Wray had stayed on, he would have forced Donald Trump to make that action, right? He would have forced Donald Trump to undermine the norm and the practice of allowing an FBI director to serve out their full tenure. And it would have then brought conversation to light about the importance of this. And so in some way, he is caving and he's allowing Donald Trump to get what he wants, right? So he wants to put all of these loyalists in a position of power. And I would have appreciated Wray saying, no, I'm going to reinforce. And if you want to break that norm, if you want to fire me halfway into my term, then do that. But at least you'll have to explain why you're breaking that norm. So no, again, as a human being, I understand the decision, but for the institutional reputation of the FBI and for those employees, I would have loved to have seen Wray stick and force that fight, force the president to do the unjust and ugly thing.
Yeah. I'm talking with political science professor William Muck from North Central College. He also does a podcast called Politics Lab. We are going to continue to talk about national and world events right after this.
Get social with WCPT 820 and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at WCPT 820.
Amy Goodman reports on the news stories rarely covered by the corporate media. Democracy Now!
The UN's Humanitarian Affairs Office warned Palestinian children are at high risk of injury or death from unexploded ordnance left after more than 13 months of Israeli attacks. 8-year-old Mohammed Karmash, this is his mother.
No one was there to tell him that these are explosives that the Israelis throw.
Democracy Now! Weekday evenings at 10 on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Alexa, play WCPT.
WCPT from TuneIn.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
And I am joined by political science professor William Muck from North Central College. He's also going to be sitting in for me Monday, December 23rd and Friday, December 27th. And I'm sure he would be most happy to take your calls and chat with you about the news of the day, just as we are doing now. I want to talk to you. I know that a recent episode, maybe the most recent episode of your podcast, you and Phil Barker talked about what was going on in Syria. It's interesting because I was talking the Thursday before the weekend that Assad's regime fell. the Thursday before, I was talking to an expert on the area, and they were saying, Vladimir Putin is going to do everything in his power to keep the Assad regime in power because that's, for both Iran and Russia. That Syria is how they access ports, and Syria is really important to them. And then 2 days later, it was like, oh, he's gone. He was supposed to, Assad was supposed to address the nation Saturday night, and when it came time to address the nation, nobody could find him. I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh. But I just think that's hilarious that nobody knew he and his family were leaving the country for Russia, for asylum in Russia. And events unfolded most quickly in that part of the world. What did you guys, when you were talking about Syria, what did you and Phil discuss?
Well, just as you noted, how extraordinary and how it caught all of us off guard. It was funny because the week before, Phil and I, there had been like a little bit of movement on some of the rebel forces. And so we were deciding, should we talk about Syria? And we said, nah, it's a nothing burger. There's nothing really happening there. And then a week later, Assad is gone. And what I think is so, sort of interesting about all of this is that this is how dictators get removed. It's not a slow linear process where you can see it coming. You kind of it's out of left field, right? It's sort of, everything is normal, and then suddenly it changes. And I have to think that Assad being toppled in Syria is causing panic for Putin in Russia, in Iran, Kim Jong-un, all the dictators around the world look at this and say, it can happen so quickly. So I think the history of that is really, really something. Also connecting this all the way back to the Arab Spring in 2011. That's really what initiated this movement in the Middle East and North Africa where, in 2011 we had leaders in, long-standing dictators in Tunisia and Egypt and Yemen and Libya were all tossed. And then, the Syrian civil war took another 13 years, but this is still part of that movement. So it's kind of the unique ways that history plays out it's really fascinating and extraordinary. And Joan, it just sort of catches you by surprise sometimes.
It really does. It's like, oh, well, there's this, but, chances are nothing will happen. And then all of a sudden it's completely different. And then I'm seeing the pundits say, well, don't expect there to be suddenly a democracy in Syria. We have to wait and see how this shakes out and who ends up in power. And yet the recent government, such as it is, put out a statement that I saw on social media. It's like, commercial banks are going to reopen. We want all the government workers to go back to work. Don't worry, you're going to be fine. If you attack a journalist, that's going to be punishable by prison. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe not a democracy, but it sure seems better than what they had before.
No, absolutely right. And I think that's the most important early steps. Do we see a government that tries to be inclusive, that respects the rights of the various minority groups in the country? Does it try to get the economy up and running? Like these sort of basic day-to-day things. That's what you want in the early stages, right? Because everybody is just delighted that Assad is gone, right? The repressive authoritarian regime is gone. And you're going to give the new government, whatever that ends up looking like, a little bit of space to say, hey, let's go out and do our job. And then there will be time to talk about democracy, and that might be a little bit more challenging. But the short-term hope is just, hey, let's start solving the simple problems and taking care of the people. And then hopefully that transitions into something similar to democracy. But, just in the short run, let's just start solving some simple problems.
Give us some insight in your study of political science over the years. We've got this rebel group composed of many factions. Except for Assad, pretty much everybody else from the Assad government is still there in the country. And, they're trying to create something. What does political science teach you about what is going on behind the scenes? Like the new government, are they getting phone calls from Vladimir Putin? Are they getting phone calls from Iran? Are they getting phone calls from the United States saying, hey, guys, let's talk?
Yes, I'm sure a lot of that is happening. Now, what's a little complicating to this is, so basically the Rebel Alliance, you're hearing this referred to as HTS, this organization, umbrella organization. The gentleman who's leading that organization, a guy named Golani, has a complicated past. He was in Iraq during some of the Civil War stages and had ties to Al-Qaeda and ties to ISIS. I mean, he has some uncomfortable history and connections to terrorist organizations. Now, he has openly rejected that and said he no longer wants to be affiliated with these terrorist organizations, but it makes it much more difficult for Joe Biden to pick up the phone because we still have him on the terrorist watch list, right? And I think there's still a bounty out for him. So these are hard choices that governments around the world need to decide. Okay, this guy is far from perfect, but it does seem like he wants to do the right things. It does seem like he wants to create an inclusive government. How do we balance the good things that he's saying right now with the bad things and organizations that he's been tied to in the past? And that's international politics, right? You hope that it's always easy choices, but sometimes you have to make difficult choices. So I think those are the hard conversations that are occurring in capitals around the world. How do we want to help them? Who do we want to deal with? That's a really, really precarious thing. I will say I think the positive steps we're seeing out of Syria right now is that they're not completely disbanding the old structure of government. If you remember, when the United States toppled the Iraqi government, we got rid of the military and basically said we're starting over, and it created total chaos. You sometimes have to use those institutions that are in place, and I think it's a good sign that some of those in this transitional government are saying, like, hey, we want to hold some people accountable, but we also want to maintain some of these institutions because they're important for stability. So it's hard. It's complicated. These are really, really difficult times, and I think we should keep expectations low that Syria is suddenly going to become a flourishing democracy, but you just hope they can become a little bit better.
How does a government make a decision when it's, like you said, do they deal with this guy who has a questionable past? How do governments balance who they are and what they believe in versus just being pragmatic and dealing with the world as it is?
Yeah, usually they side on pragmatism, right? So they side on what is in the interest of the country. So we could talk about the United States as a long history of engaging with authoritarians, with dictators, right? When it was in the United States' interest to deal with a dictator, we will do so. And so that's the sort of the challenging question. And so states more often than not say, okay, what's in the United States' interest? And we're seeing some of that from the United States, but also from Israel, whereas Israel is clearly pursuing what it believes to be its strategic interest in the area, right? So it's carrying out bombing campaigns. It's sort of
it's like, let's take advantage of this chaos right now and go in and take out their weapons deposits, their places where they make, supposedly where they make drugs. Let's get rid of all this while they're so disorganized, nobody's going to come after us for doing it.
That's exactly right. And so you're seeing a whole bunch of states do that, right? Where Syria is in many ways kind of a proxy battle for regional and global dynamics. So, when Assad is toppled, that's bad news. The loser is clearly, in addition to Assad, is Iran and Russia. Very, very bad news for them. Very good news for Turkey. I think good news for Israel. Potentially good news for the United States. So at Saudi Arabia, these other actors are trying to position themselves to say, how do we, increase our interest in the region, and hopefully at the same time also allow Syria to self-determine and become its own sovereign country. So, again, it's a really, really messy process, and you want the Syrians to be driving it, but the reality is all of these other powers are going to be vying and trying to have their say as well. So it's going to be fascinating to watch, and you just hope that Syria is able to move in a more positive direction.
Political science professor William Muck and I are going to take a real quick break. We're going to be back with more after this.
If you've missed any of today's show, you can listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Amazon, or HeartlandSignal.com. Just search for Joan Esposito. Live, local, and progressive.
This is Chicago's Progressive Talk, 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and online at WCPT820.com, where facts matter.
Attention, everyone.
Don't turn that dial. Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, returns right now on WCPT 820.
Political science professor William Muck teaches at North Central College. He also co-hosts a political podcast called Politics Lab. He is here with me talking about world events. And what was the reason why Donald Trump decided to humiliate Justin Trudeau and go after Canada, of all places in the world?
I think because he could, right? And this is something where this goes back, was it last week when Donald Trump announced that he was going to impose 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico and then some additional ones on China. And what we saw is, basically within a day or so, Justin Trudeau flew down to Mar-a-Lago and was having dinner with Donald Trump and having conversations about the danger of the tariffs. And I think one thing we realize is that world leaders now understand how they have to deal with Donald Trump. They have to sort of swoon over him and come down and make him feel like he is the great leader, fill him with compliments, and then hopefully you can translate that into some policy, right? So Justin Trudeau thinks, I'm sure he thought, I can come down here and show Donald Trump a little bit of grace and maybe he'll change his mind. But what happened is Donald Trump took advantage of that and then is out tweeting.
There's a shock.
Exactly right. Saying, apparently in those conversations, he suggested that maybe Canada should become the 51st state. And, they were joking about it. But at the same time, then Trump goes to social media and is putting out posts showing himself, with the Canadian flag. And then there's all these insinuations. He made another post where he referred to the prime minister as governor. Talked about, Canada as a potential state instead of, an independent sovereign country. So this is the reality of what it's going to be like to deal with Donald Trump as a head of state. And, it has to be terribly embarrassing for Justin Trudeau.
Well,
and
I was
Canada
just going to say, Justin Trudeau has gotten real backlash. People are talking about how he capitulated and he rolled over when he should have said, that Trump, the message that I saw from multiple sources was Justin Trudeau should have understood that Trump is a bully and you don't roll over and show your belly to a bully. You stand up and you say, you want a piece of me? You want a piece of me? You show up. And the, what was his title? One of the very powerful people in the Canadian government did come out and make that statement recently. And he was like, he said what Justin Trudeau should have, which is like, Donald Trump, if he thinks he's coming after us, he's going to find that he's got a real fight on his hands. And, he can't treat us this way. Just because we're Canadian and we've always been nice doesn't mean that's how we're always going to be. It just seemed like, it seems to me that Justin Trudeau didn't win with Trump and he didn't win with Canadians. It was a lose-lose, if you will.
Absolutely, right? Canada looks weak. It's embarrassing. All of that is really, really not a positive development for Canada, right? And again, that's beside the whole issue of how dangerous the tariffs would be both for the United States and Canada. These are, it would be a terrible idea to do that. But what we're seeing here is, Justin Trudeau saying, okay, what can I do to prevent this bad thing from happening? Well, I'll go and meet with Donald Trump. He sure loves it when people talk about how great he is. I'll try that. Well, that backfires, right? Mm-hmm. Now, the president of Mexico had a much more confrontational approach. She was, tweeting at him and saying, we're not going to deal with this. And, maybe that's the right way to do. But we can think back to Trump's first administration. If you try to bully Trump, then you get sort of the Kim Jong-un experience where they're tweeting back and forth at each other. So there's really no good way to deal with Donald Trump.
Okay, I've got a suggestion. How about this? Instead of going to Mar-a-Lago or saying things that are incendiary to Donald Trump, find out, if he doesn't already know, who are the 10 biggest companies who sell a lot of their products in the Canadian marketplace. And you call those 10 CEOs and say, you better rein in your boy right here, right now, or we're going to put tariffs on your stuff, and you're going to see this huge market where you sell your widgets disappear. I want you to pick up the phone before the end of business today and get on the phone to Mar-a-Lago or whatever. That's maybe what should have worked.
No, that's an interesting point, because you're right, because that may be the one, the corporate connections are the one thing that Trump might listen to, because the reality is this idea that, we sell goods to Canada and Canada sell, it's the global marketplace is so complicated. Think about the U.S. auto industry and the parts that are going back and forth between Mexico, the United States, and Canada. It's really a seamless market to produce all of these products. And if you suddenly say, okay, 25% tariff on these imports, it's going to be devastating on U.S. producers and consumers. So it's a complicated issue. But again, Donald Trump offers simple solutions to these complex problems. And now it becomes a problem for all these other heads of state who have to decide, how do we deal with a Donald Trump? Are we nice to him? Are we mean to him? I think in general, it's going to be a big dumpster fire for international politics over the next 4 years as states try to navigate the whims and moods of one Donald Trump.
Yeah, I think that people around the world are going to have to figure out how to best deal with Donald Trump. How to get Donald Trump to do what you want him to do and think that it is his own idea. That's really what you want. Didn't Angela Merkel give an interview recently where she talked about how she dealt with Trump, and I think she talked about some perceived mistakes or some ways that she would have done things differently? He's not like anybody else in politics. The rules that most of these people understand of how the world works don't seem to apply to him.
No, because he has such a sort of simplistic and naive view of the way of the world, right? So, Trump always is thinking about winning and losing. How do I win as an individual? And the reality is that the United States plays a unique role as sort of a global leader, right? And that's not something that Trump can understand. So Canada looks to the United States to say, hey, you need to play a role shaping in the world that's good for you, it's good for Canada, it's good for NATO, all of those things. But those are not issues or perspectives that Trump wants. What he understands is what's good for me. And so I think what we're also likely to see is a lot of states trying to, pursue grift, right? So, we saw Saudi Arabia and other countries do this. How do we line Donald Trump's pockets to make it much easier for us to interact with the United States? And I think that's likely to be a dominant strategy. People are going to be thinking about how do we make this economically good for Donald Trump as a person, make him rich, and that's likely going to help us as well. And again, we see this already in the cabinet where the grift, he's selling guitars and he's selling perfume, and all of these things should be causing, red lights to go off and alarm bells to go off to say this is not the kind of leadership you're looking for in the country, but it's the type of leadership we're going to see.
Yeah. It is staggering to me that it seems that so many voters either they want to think the best of him. I've seen interview after interview where people are like, he won't do the things he's saying he'll do, and he won't deport me because I'm a good immigrant, and he's not gonna. There's not going to be a federal abortion ban because he said this is an issue for the states, and I'm thinking to myself, ill-informed, naive, hoping for the best. I guess maybe all of.
Right. I saw some polling today coming out where large majorities of the American public think that the Trump transition is going really well. And it's one of those, Joan, where I had to sit down and say, well, what maybe I'm the problem. Am I misperceiving things? Because, as I look at the cabinet and I look at the way in which Trump is trying to personally enrich himself through this presidency, I look at the way that he's dealing with other countries, it feels really, really problematic. But the American public as a whole is looking at this transition and saying everything seems to be looking good. And again, it speaks to the broader role for civic education and the need to really have more meaningful conversations about what it means to be part of a democracy and how you prevent individuals like Donald Trump from getting into these positions of power. And it's really disappointing. And again, or sometimes I feel like maybe I'm the weirdo here. Maybe everybody else has it figured out and I'm looking at things the wrong way.
Well, talking about this perception that the transition is going really well, it was pointed out that after Barack Obama lost to Donald Trump, in that lame duck period, Obama did not just walk away. He made speeches. He put in place protections. He was out in front of the cameras. He was still the president until January 20th. And I've been seeing some criticisms of Joe Biden in that it's, Donald Trump goes to France to meet with Macron. Donald Trump, is doing this. Donald Trump is doing that. And it's like, even with the fall of Syria, Joe Biden didn't really make a public statement on that till Monday. And you know how the news cycle moves fast. It seems to some people that Joe Biden and, frankly, Kamala Harris have basically just sort of thrown in the towel and given up. And they're not trying to be out in front of the public. They're not trying to do whatever they can to be resistant to what's coming. I'm very puzzled by that. I mean, I don't understand it. I know that he, pardoned a lot of people, and yay for that. But okay, what else? Is it a health issue? Is it, is Joe Biden just seriously no longer able to do the job? And then what's Kamala's excuse? I get the vice president's schedule every day. Meeting with staff behind closed doors, no public appearances. Meeting with staff behind closed doors, no public appearances. Meeting with staff behind closed doors. Isn't anybody going to do anything except just roll over and pretend he's already president?
No, I think this is a really important observation, Joan, right? There's more. I mean, Joe Biden likes to do stuff behind the scenes, right? And so I think there's probably a lot of work going on. I think Joe Biden probably wants to have some grand Middle Eastern deal, maybe even a ceasefire before he leaves office. But there's also the side of the presidency that is the performative side, where you act as a leader. And in some ways, there are a lot of Democrats out there and a lot of members, a lot of citizens who would like to see Joe Biden playing more of a role, talking about the transition. And you're absolutely right. I mean, Barack Obama, when Trump was coming into office in 2016, was very much out in front of our faces and talking about the importance of democracy. And I think that helped galvanize people as Trump came into office. But Biden isn't that president. And maybe you're right. Maybe there's some issues of age. Maybe he feels a little defeated in the sense that, that Kamala didn't win and so much of what he fought for in terms of preserving democracy. But I'd like to see a little more fight in Joe Biden, and Harris as well, like moving forward to say, like, hey, Democrats, there's some positivity here. There's a future. And I think there's a vacuum there right now. And that's problematic.
I saw, Ray had Lawrence O'Donnell on or something, and they went to the soundbite about Joe Biden talking about climate. And I said to Ray, wow, he really has good days, doesn't he? That was, there's good Joe Biden. And Ray goes, Joan, that was from 2018. And I was okay. Yeah. And I'd forgotten just how forceful and how lively he could be. But I haven't seen that Joe Biden for a while.
It reminds me a little bit of when Al Gore lost, right? And there was this sense of defeat among Democrats, and Al Gore just basically went away, and Bill Clinton then went away, and there wasn't a voice for Democrats at that point. Now somebody else will emerge, but it feels similar to that, where the party is a little rudderless, and it's looking for somebody to kind of take the lead there. And I guess it's normal when you lose an election, but there is an emptiness to that, and there's an absence of leadership as well.
Yeah. I'm talking to political science professor William Muck. We need to take a real quick break. We're going to be back with more after this.
There's no excuse to miss Joan Esposito.
It's number one on my stereo.
Live, local, and progressive. You can listen to her daily at WCPT820.com on your computer or phone.
Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
Somebody just pointed out in the text line, I don't understand this. Joan, I'm surprised you after Barack Obama lost to Donald Trump. He never lost to Donald Trump. You should be ashamed of yourself for saying that. And of course, I misspoke. Of course, Donald Trump defeated Hillary Clinton. But Barack Obama was still president. And in that lame duck period, he was out there front and center. Yes, you're absolutely right, listener. And the words that came out of my mouth were not entirely accurate, and I apologize for that. I'd like to blame it on brain fog, but I don't know. Maybe this is just my normal brain, and it just had one of those cramps that it gets now and then. There's so much going on. I want to talk to you. We haven't spoken since the South Korean coup that almost happened and then didn't, but now he's just as defiant, seemingly, as he was before.
Yeah, this was another one. You know, we talked about Syria and how this kind of came out of left field. Same thing with South Korea, where you had a sitting president. And for our listeners, like, South Korea is very much like the American political system. It's deeply divided. It's heavily partisan. Not a lot gets done because both sides kind of want to just fight with each other, in partisanship rather than get. But nevertheless, the fact that, President Yoon suddenly declares martial law, like, that shocked everybody because it felt totally unnecessary, completely out of left field. And it reminds us of how easily, a well-established and well-respected democracy can quickly drift in a much more authoritarian direction.
Exactly. We saw things change in Syria, and suddenly it looked like things were changing in South Korea. It was like, wait a minute.
Yes. No, absolutely, right. And in South Korea, a really, really dangerous development, right, where you had a situation where I'm still not entirely clear what was motivating the president to do so. He argued that sort of the North Korean ideology had infiltrated the political system. But I'm sure you, very much like me, as I'm watching events play out in South Korea, is thinking about our own democracy and then wondering, is this a preview of things that we're likely to see with Donald Trump as a president? And you hope not, but what Yoon did there is he basically said, I'm not getting what I want. I'm going to create a threat that doesn't really exist, and then I'm going to basically use the military to end the parliament. And, so it was so wonderful to see the people push back, the legislators push back. Democracy sort of stretched its muscles and said, we're not going to allow this to happen. But it also is terrifying that you could get that close to something like that occurring.
Yeah. I know. And here's the thing. It didn't get as much attention. Everybody was like, they took to the streets and they protested and people helped people, get in so that they could vote. And they were, boosting people up and getting them in the windows so that they could go and vote this down. But also, from what I've read, one of the main reasons why the coup was brought to an end was because members of his own party told them that they were not going to support this. And because people were like, could it happen here? Could it happen here? And if something like that did happen here, I don't know if I see Senate congressional members or Republicans in the Senate, Republicans in the Congress going to Donald Trump and saying, we don't support this. You better back off right now, buddy, because, we supported you before, but man, this is a bridge too far. I'm not so sure we'd get that kind of party resistance.
No, I think you're absolutely spot on there, right? I mean, think about, we've already had 2 test cases, right? 2 impeachments where Republicans had a chance to say, this guy is dangerous to democracy, right? And Senate Republicans know exactly the type of danger that Donald Trump poses. And the first impeachment about, Ukraine and shaking down Zelensky for information about Hunter Biden, that should have been one. Certainly the second impeachment with January 6th, that should have been enough evidence to say this individual is dangerous. And think if Senate Republicans, if Mitch McConnell and others had said, this guy has been a cancer on the party, it's time to end this and move on. And they sort of thought that was going to be the case, that he would go away. you need to seize on those moments, right? And I think this is why it's so important in South Korea to continue with this impeachment and get rid of the president. Because if you miss on those moments, these guys come back, right? And Donald Trump has shown that he will continue to come back. And so you have these institutional opportunities to end authoritarianism. And if you don't do it, you're going to be stuck with it for a while. And so, yeah, no, the parallels there are really, really uncomfortable.
And I'd like to share this with you. This was apparently posted yesterday. It was reposted by Brian Tyler Cohen, who is a progressive or a liberal political observer. A quote from Mitch McConnell. "We are in a very, very dangerous world right now, reminiscent of before World War II. Even the slogan is the same, America First. That was what they said in the 30s. And somebody also posted, do you think he understands how he helped create this nightmare? Mitch McConnell, oh, Trump, we're very dangerous times. I don't know. Donald Trump's looking pretty bad. All these bad things he's doing. I don't know. Do we, is that irony? I mean, is it irony that Mitch McConnell, the man who in many ways helped Donald Trump be Donald Trump, is now like, ooh, look at that. That's no good.
Yeah, and it's not like Mitch McConnell and Senate Republicans just figured this out. They knew this from the beginning. I mean, you go all the way back to 2015 and 2016. The reason we know they thought this is because they said this. You know, you go back and, Marco Rubio or Graham, all of these Republican senators described Donald Trump to a T. They articulated the threat that he is going to pose to the democracy, and now now all of a sudden they've seen that develop. So no, they've known the entire time. It's their own fear of them staying in office, fear, to go back to a point you made earlier, of being primaried. That fear of staying in power is what has enabled Donald Trump, because we know one of the few checks on populist demagogues is the political party itself. You know, the voters will keep voting in populist demagogues. Like, the public, we won't save us, but the party can stop it. And the Republican Party has had multiple different times or opportunities to stop Donald Trump, and they haven't done so. And I think at this point, it's almost too late, right? You're at best maybe hoping to slow Donald Trump down.
And, they've had, I can't count the number of off-ramps the Republican Party has had to get rid of Donald Trump once and for all. But all of them would have required some short-term pain and maybe even a few Republicans getting voted out of office. And nobody had the courage to take the short-term pain for the long-term gain. And now Mitch McConnell, of all people, talking about what a dangerous world we live in. And it just makes me want to run from the room screaming. Okay? Is he trying to do like a reputation repair? Like, I'm going to go out
late, Joan.
looking
too
like
late
a
for
statesman?
That. He's already gone.
Oh.
Yeah, his reputation is already ruined. I think both within Democratic and Republican circles. But I think leadership bears unique responsibility, because Mitch McConnell, in those days after January 6th, had a really hard decision to make. He could have pushed and come out publicly to say, I'm voting for conviction. It's the right thing to do. And it would have provided maybe enough cover to actually get a conviction. But if you leave it just to the Mitt Romneys and the others who aren't really in leadership roles, it creates the space for Trump to come back. And so, no, I think he bears and I think Mitch McConnell fully understands his complicity in all of this, right? He bears a unique responsibility for enabling Trumpism to continue.
And we know that Mitch McConnell hates Donald Trump. They didn't speak for how long a period of time. And, Donald Trump was making racist comments about Mitch McConnell's wife. Oh, I guess it's anything in the pursuit of power. I have no friends. I have no enemies. I simply have interests, and interests align and interests diverge. I don't know. I guess that's reality, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, think about Ted. Ted Cruz is another one who Donald Trump made fun of his family and his father and his wife and all of that.
Your wife is ugly.
Now Ted Cruz,
man, she's
one
ugly.
of the biggest backer. Yes. Yeah. And so, again, Joan, the allure of power and being close to power is so strong that individuals are willing to sell their soul and their integrity and their beliefs, right? I mean, that's the thing. I think over time, what eventually historians will detail, all of these guys understood from the get-go who Donald Trump was. They understood the threat that he posed, and they just didn't have the spine or the backbone to push back because it might have undermined their own individual political power. And it's going to be an ugly chapter in American democracy when that story of sort of Senate and House Republicans is told.
Yeah. I don't think history will be kind to them, nor do I think it should be.
No, it shouldn't be, right? I mean, that's the thing. It feels like, that's the thing where like political science and historians and, we've seen these type of individuals before. Donald Trump is nothing really all that new. I mean, it's a different package, but we know this story. We know the things that he's done and what he's going to do. And that's what makes it so frustrating to see this all happening, because again, it's a slow motion ride and we know what's going to happen, but yet we're unable to stop it. And so many get on the Trump train and say, no, this is great, it's wonderful, and let's just ride it into the dumpster fire that is inevitably going to emerge over the next 4 years.
He won't do to me what he did to everybody else. He likes me. He's gonna work with me. He's gonna protect me. He's not gonna fire me. He's not gonna turn his back on me. Good luck with that. Good luck with that.
There was conversation about Ron DeSantis maybe being the next Secretary of Defense, and I thought, how in the world does he not see that Donald Trump is maybe just bringing him in to fire him at some point, right? But I don't know. It's a really extraordinary, bizarro political world that we find ourselves in, Joan. It's fascinating to watch, but as a citizen, it's terrible to experience.
Yeah, really. Professor William Muck, political science professor at North Central College in Naperville, also co-host of the Politics Lab podcast. You will hear William Muck again right here, December 23rd and Friday, December 27th, when he comes in to host this radio show. Do you have any guests lined up yet?
Not yet, but I'm thinking, Joan, I got to think about who we want to bring on because we want to have some good, fun shows.
Yes. I have no doubt that that's exactly what you'll have. Thanks so much for being here today. Good luck with
Always
the
a pleasure.
fill-in. All right.
Thanks so much.
We're going to take a break for news. We're going to be back with more after this.
The Thom Hartmann radio program provides all of the intelligence, information, and insight you'll need to win the water cooler wars. Weekdays 11 to 2 right here on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk, where facts matter. Because facts matter. You're listening to WCPT 820.
Joan Esposito, live.
Celebrating our power to bring about change.
Local.
Everybody has to work together.
And progressive.
I think you get the idea.
On WCPT 820.
A while back, I always tell you at the beginning of the show about, the mainstream media, the newsletters I read. And one of the newsletters that I have been subscribing to is something called Chop Wood, Carry Water. Basically, that title refers to, no matter what bad is going on in the world, that there are just certain things we just keep moving forward. We just keep doing our best. We just keep trying to do what good we can within our small little lives. It is a really interesting newsletter that is generally, generally filled with pretty positive stuff. But that's going to be trickier to accommodate as the world progresses under Donald Trump, because the good news is going to take a little bit more digging. Recently, Chop Wood, Carry Water reported on some new research that came out talking about the role that abortion played in this particular election. And Jessica Craven, who writes the newsletter, got some grief from people. It was like, that's not good news. You promised us good news. Jessica Craven joins us now to talk about that and other things going on in the world. Jessica, how are you today?
Hi, Joan. How are you? Very good to be here with you again. Thank you for having me.
I really appreciated your newsletter where you said, look, I read through my emails and, you guys felt like I was bringing you down. But, in addition to bringing you good news, I kind of have to tell you what the reality is, what the world is. How have people reacted to your explanation?
Well, it's just been a tough moment because it is true, like you say. I've really, really made an effort to keep the newsletter positive and upbeat and very focused on hope, and that's been, somewhat easier over the last few years, just because at least we've been under a decent administration, and there's been a lot of good policy passed. But yeah, this morning, what I was talking about, or what I had been talking about earlier this week, was just about we're starting to see a lot of reports based on focus groups with voters in battleground states who, at the last minute sort of went for Trump over Kamala Harris. And I had been talking about how a lot of these voters are pro-choice and are very adamantly pro-choice, but simply did not believe that Donald Trump would do the things that Democrats were saying he was going to do. And there was almost a backlash against Kamala Harris for saying he was going to do things that they just simply didn't believe he was going to do. So this is what I was telling my readers about, and they got very they're not upset with me, but there is a very overwhelming feeling of, if people are so misinformed and so determined to believe what is not true, why bother helping them? Why bother trying to help? What's the point? A lot of that kind of feeling is what I was dealing with.
I understand. I mean, I get that too. It sort of sometimes feels like it's absolutely hopeless. It's almost as if, I don't know whether there were people who wanted to vote for Donald Trump because they really believe whites should stay in power, but they know that's not something they can say, so they talk about the economy or what. But it does seem that there are a lot of people, despite the fact that we saw how awful he was, he's had this job before, who want to believe the best of him. Oh, and my favorite is, he won't deport me. I'm a good immigrant. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, well, we'll see how. And, I get the same thing, Jessica. Just today, we were talking at the beginning of the show about Pete Hegseth and Tulsi Gabbard and some of these Kash Patel, some of these wildly unqualified picks that Donald Trump wants to put in positions of extreme power. And somebody texted in, Joan, I can't stand to hear any more horror stories about Trump and his people. We know they're all hideous, and all the talk just makes me sick. So what do we do, Jessica? Do we back away from that kind of talk? It kind of seems like important stuff that we should be talking about. I don't know how to balance that. I understand that sentiment. I really do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think there is what I tell people is there has to be a balance. So we have to know what's going on. It doesn't mean that we have to wallow in it and think about it 24/7. And in fact, I think that we can't get through this period if we don't take a lot of breaks and take a lot of pauses for either self-care or just getting out into community, talking to, going for a walk with a friend, or, taking our dog to the dog park, or something where we're just getting away from it. It's this is going to be a slog. It's going to be a relentless stream of bad news for a while. I mean, hopefully we will continue to find pockets of good, and I'm always looking for those. As I think I have a newsletter on Sundays that is just a list of all the good things that happened in a given week. And even in the worst weeks, there's always good things. So we are going to have to work very hard to remember to seek those things out as well. And also just remember that, this is going to pass. This is a particularly hard moment that we're in, as I said, actually, in my newsletter today, because Trump has not taken office yet. So it's all about what he's going to do. His approval ratings are sort of bafflingly high. For whatever reason, right now, Americans, not us, but the people who voted for him, feel really good about it. And he's got no pushback. We're not having confirmation hearings yet, so it's all kind of speculative. Like, this is his high water mark right now. And as soon as he is sworn in, it's going to start going downhill for him very quickly, because we know his policies are unbelievably unpopular, and we know he's been lying to voters. So as voters start to figure out that they were being lied to, and also as people remember what he's like, they didn't like him last time. His approval rating, I don't think ever went above 47%, 46%. He's not a popular guy with anyone outside of his base, but some people who don't pay any attention decided to wing it and go with him, not really knowing or believing the truth about him. And sadly, they're going to find out, and it's going to start being harder on him and the Republicans than it is on us. But right now, it's a particularly tough time. So I would say small bites, like we go in for a while, we look at what's happening, we make a phone call or two, because it is important that we are raising our voices right now, because otherwise our senators are just going to feel like, what's the point in fighting? Right. My constituents don't even seem to care. So we've got to let them know we care and then take breaks. And it's all about pacing yourself. It's all about knowing when to put down the phone, put down the news, turn off the cable, and, get outside or go hang out with your kid or go hang out with your pet canary or whoever you hang out with,
One thing that I've said to my listeners is everybody can't fix everything. If you look at all the different things that are going to be bad or that are going to be overwhelming, that will paralyze you. So narrow in. What do you care about? Do you care about libraries and book bans? Maybe make that your focus. Do you care about female autonomy and abortion rights? Maybe that's where you put your energy, because I think there's going to be this tsunami. Just like in Trump's first administration, there's going to be this tsunami of bad things that are coming your way, and everybody can't fix everything. I think we have to, take breaks, like you said, that's important, but we also need to narrow focus. I can't fix every problem, but maybe I can start attending library board meetings and making sure that, libraries are free to have all the books that the librarians want on the shelves, and making some issue you care about your focus. That's the advice I've been giving people.
Absolutely. And local is really important. Local and state level elections. The states still have so much power and control. So if you live in a blue state, you can keep sort of going back to your state legislature and saying, do more, fight back harder. And if you live in a purple or a red state, there's a lot of work to do in those states, and it might not pay off right away. But, state legislatures are they say they're the laboratories of democracy or the laboratories of autocracy, depending on what we, allow them to become. So it's a good place to put your focus. And, I hope people will also run for office. It's just critical that we have more people looking to do public service who actually want to do public service and not just looting the American government and the American people, which is what Republicans want to do. They want to loot our country.
And I think the Democratic Party, I don't know if I've talked about this on the air, guys, but there has been a move. Generally, even if you're the party out of power, you have party members in committees, and there has been a move for younger Democrats to run for the leadership of these Democratic committees, leadership that generally was given automatically to the most senior person. The Judiciary Committee, Jerry Nadler, to his credit, said he was going to step aside and let Jamie Raskin take over. Jamie Raskin made that clear. That removes Jamie Raskin from the leadership of oversight. AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, has said, I'm going to step up and go try to become the leader of the Oversight Committee. And there seems to be a changing of the guard. Not that Jamie Raskin is, 28 years old by any stretch of the imagination, but a lot of these committees have been led by people in their very late 70s, and they seem to be stepping aside and letting a younger guard, maybe somebody who is more aggressive, take over. And I think that's a very positive sign.
Yeah, I do too. And I credit to Hakeem Jeffries because he's got a certain amount of say over whether or not that is allowed to happen. There are leaders who would say, well, seniority is the most important thing. And fortunately, he is not saying that. It sort of makes me think of Lyndon Johnson, who came in and took over the Senate Majority Leader and got rid of didn't get rid of it completely, but really changed the system for how people got elevated to chairmanships and really revitalized the Senate in a lot of ways. And that's a little bit of what we're seeing happen in the House right now. I really wish it was happening in the Senate as well. I was actually really hopeful that maybe Chuck Schumer would consider stepping down and letting a young person take over there, because I don't get the feeling he's got the stomach for this fight. But it's great that it's happening in the House, so I'm going to focus on where, it is going the way I would like to see it going, and right now that's the House. And I'm very grateful to AOC and Jamie Raskin for stepping up and being willing to do this work, because they're going to be, they're sticking their necks out. They're going to get targeted, and they are willing to do that for their country. That is patriotism. That is absolutely patriotism in its purest form. It's amazing.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if Chuck Schumer has, what do they say, fire in the belly. I think he has the experience. I think he knows the procedures. And I've seen moments where he seems to rise to the occasion. I've also seen moments where he seems, I swear to God, like he's a professor lecturing us about what's going on, and it'll be interesting. Jessica, we need to take a real quick break. Jessica Craven does a newsletter called Chop Wood, Carry Water. We are going to continue to talk with her right after this.
Get social with WCPT 820 and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at WCPT 820.
Tom Hartman.
Lori in Ocala, Florida. Hey, Lori, what's up?
Hi, Tom. First, I just want to say thank you for being here for all of us. It's really important. It's almost like having a friend there that you know you can listen to and talk to. And I've listened to you since Air America, and I really appreciate you today.
Well, thank you, Lori.
The Tom Hartman Radio Program. Weekdays 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. on WCPT 820, where facts matter. Hey, Google, play WCPT.
Streaming Chicago's progressive talk from TuneIn.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
I'm joined by Jessica Craven, who writes a newsletter called Chop Wood, Carry Water. And during the first Trump administration, a book that had been out for a while became wildly popular again. It's by Timothy Snyder. It's this little tiny book, and it's called On Tyranny. You can read it in about an hour, but the points that it makes are so clear and so important. And one of the parts of the book that people are doing a lot of referring to right now is his first rule: do not obey in advance. Jeff Bezos, why does it seem like the billionaires are more afraid to stand up to Trump? The people who can most afford to go off and stand up to Trump seem to be the least willing to do it. Jeff Bezos wouldn't let that Kamala Harris endorsement run. And, he came out and was like, oh, congratulations, Donald Trump. And, he's obviously competing with Elon Musk for space contracts and rocket contracts. But we see a lot of this. We see people who are like, oh, my gosh, Trump's in power. I better. Mark Zuckerberg, one of the richest people in the world, gave $1 million to the Trump inauguration because Trump made some nasty comments about him. Oh, I better make good on this. We're seeing it everywhere. People obeying in advance.
Yep. It is pretty. It's pretty disheartening. I agree. It is. But as I tried to point out, first of all, I think this concept is important, and I think people are taking hold of it. And for every notable person who is not listening to this advice, there are people who are listening. There are people who are saying, I'm not going to obey in advance. And so I'm just, again, like encouraging people to not only focus on the, it's very upsetting when, I got the Mark Zuckerberg news today, and I was just like, oh, God, really? I mean, why? And it is.
Why?
It is, yeah, it's terrible. But, I also look around me, and, really in the activist world especially, everybody I look around and see, grassroots leaders from all over the country, none of them are showing that attitude. None of them are giving in. Not a single person has said, well, I'm just going to join the winning team at all. Men and women and young people and middle-aged women and, people from all kinds of marginalized communities who are just saying, oh, hell no. No, we are fighting back, and we are organizing. I look at Indivisible, who, I've been a big fan of Indivisible and a member of Indivisible since basically they were founded. And I've been so proud of the way they've risen to this moment. They have not obeyed in advance. They have absolutely said, you know what, there's a leadership vacuum here, and we're stepping into it. And they are leading, and it's incredibly helpful at this moment. There are certain senators and lawmakers. I see, we've talked about Jamie Raskin and AOC, of whom I'm a huge fan, but also Elizabeth Warren has been sort of relentlessly posting. Adam Kitzinger, who is not even a Democrat, but has been fiery and great. Mark Elias, the wonderful
Democratic
lawyer
lawyer
who's been litigating all of, he's been on fire. Most of the people who I know from Substack, because my newsletter is on Substack, so we've got Robert Hubble and Joyce Vance and all of these wonderful people who are absolutely not obeying in advance, who are absolutely saying, oh, no, this may be overwhelming, this may be hard, we don't necessarily know what this is going to look like, but we are fighting back. And so I am looking for courage wherever it arises, and what I'm really encouraging my subscribers and my followers on TikTok and whatever to do is just find those people, thank them, help them, bolster them, encourage them, and then be one yourself. We all have to be the leaders we want to see right now. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, I agree. Why do you think it is? Do you think it's a smart corporate move that the Mark Zuckerbergs and the Jeff Bezos want to make sure that these big money-making companies that they've created don't get any kind of pressure or take any hits during a Trump administration? Because it can't be something personal. They both have. They probably couldn't spend the money they have if they spent $1 million a day for the rest of their lives. So it can't be personal. Is it? If we were on the board of Facebook or Meta or Blue Horizon, would we be saying, yeah, good move? Would we be championing this capitulation?
Yeah, I don't know. It seems to me that with the power that has been given to the corporations in our country by the Supreme Court and by, the sort of constant, conglomerations and the lack of antitrust work until President Biden, they've just become inordinately powerful. And they are unregulated and they're mindless entities whose only purpose is to make themselves larger. And so ultimately the CEOs just become part of that sort of Frankenstein beast that is just simply has one purpose, which is to enrich itself. And, so that's what they're doing. Occasionally you see an ethical CEO. It is a vanishingly rare thing to see, but we do. We see them, Patagonia comes to mind. There are corporations that are really determined to be ethical and have ethical CEOs, but it's vanishingly rare. And most of these CEOs are just part of the sort of corporate beast. They want money, and they will do whatever they have to do to make their shareholders happy and to keep losses down. And so we can't look to corporations to save us.
No.
And obviously, I think we can all see that from the healthcare, conversations that we're having this week. Corporations they are incapable of empathy. They are incapable of patriotism. They are incapable of learning or acting unselfishly. They are the opposite. They're inherently.
I saw somebody recently who said, you have to think of corporations. If they were people, they'd be sociopaths.
Exactly. That is exactly right. And so why? Because they're corporate CEOs. And that is, we can never expect anything better from these mega corporations. I mean, these massively overgrown, bloated corporations that should never have been allowed to get as large as they are. No. So why are we surprised? I'm not sure. We shouldn't be.
Is there one area of interest that you are most passionate about, or one issue you always keep an eye on?
I mean, I've always been a climate activist first and foremost. I have been interested in climate activism for 40 years at this point. My uncle was a very famous scientist, a guy named Wallace Broecker, and he founded the term global warming. So, he did work on ocean currents, and so I've been aware of it since I was a kid. And as a climate activist, I can't say that this is my happiest moment. Joe Biden was a flawed president, but he was pretty damn good on climate. He certainly moved us further ahead than any other president has. And it's sad to see, to know the attacks that are going to come on his policies. I'm cautiously optimistic that some of them will not be reversed because they are bringing a lot of jobs to Republican states. So, that's the area I'm probably watching the closest, but I'm passionate about a lot of things. So
yes, you are.
It's all of a piece. It's all related ultimately. So we can't really care about one thing without caring about all of it,
Well, I enjoy your newsletter immensely, and I really admire all the work you put into it. I know a little bit about the kind of work it takes to produce something like that, and it's really staggering, and you do a fabulous job, and I thank you.
Thank you. Well, I feel the same about you, and thank you very much, Joan. It's really nice talking to you, as always.
Yes. Jessica Craven, Chop Wood, Carry Water. We are going to take a break. We're going to talk to Sean Kitchen when we come right back after this.
Take Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, with you on the go by using the TuneIn app on your phone. Just search for WCPT 820.
This is Chicago's Progressive Talk, 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and online at WCPT820.com, where facts matter.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
And I'm happy to welcome back Sean Kitchen, the political correspondent at the Keystone, which is the Courier newsroom in Pennsylvania. Sean, how are you?
I'm doing great, Joan. How are you? Hanging in there?
I'm doing great, too. Things are going, it seems to me, from somebody looking in on the outside, things seem to be going pretty well in Pennsylvania, especially for your governor, Shapiro.
Yeah, I mean, the Shapiro was able to keep the House going into this year, given our election results. Democrats, were able to hold on to the House, which was really like a bright spot from Election Day.
Yeah. Well, there was that.
Yeah, the only bright spot we've had, yeah. But, no, I mean, like this, for this, Shapiro is able to hold on to be able to get his agenda through. Democrats are going to be able to keep increasing education budgets, protecting workers, and also acting as a backstop in stopping bad constitutional amendments going through.
Let's hope so. Now, maybe there's none of this going on. I mean, when it comes to political life, most people want to focus forward rather than looking back. But do you ever hear any sentiment that, maybe if Josh Shapiro had been on the ticket with Kamala, she might have done better? Any talk like that?
I don't think that's really happening here in Pennsylvania. It seems like that's coming from a lot of the outsiders. I don't know if Shapiro would have made a difference here in Pennsylvania. I don't think he would. I don't know if he would have made a difference nationally. I mean, going to the rallies and everything, there was a lot of enthusiasm for Walz and for Harris, wherever I was able to cover them throughout the election. So, I mean, the enthusiasm was there regardless. We just had like a really close election, with the president and with the Senate race, both being decided within like a half point or a point of each other. But I don't know if Shapiro would have been able to put Harris over the top here.
I have to say, Sean, I was not super familiar with Josh Shapiro, but when I saw the speeches he made at the various rallies, man, he is that kind of politician that really can create an emotional connection with the audience. I was blown away.
Yeah, no, he's really good at delivering those speeches and connecting with people. We have a running joke. We've had a running joke. I think people start picking up on it. Other Democrats, he sounds a lot like Obama. And I think the similarities are there. It was fun listening to him speak at a couple of different rallies, the one with Obama there, and just like, do we have, Obama twice or Shapiro twice? But yeah, he was able to motivate the crowds. And he was able to connect with people.
Mm-hmm. I was just you wrote something that relates to something I saw this morning. I saw that there was a teacher, an experienced third grade teacher who was beloved by the school, is now involved in litigation because she was suspended for 3 days because of the 100 books in the classroom library. There were 3 or 4 books that had gay characters, not anything to do with sex or anything like that, just characters who happened to be gay. And she was suspended without pay for 3 days. She was notified that she was being considered for termination after like 34 years of teaching. And she has filed a lawsuit charging that this the people who are coming after her are doing so in a way that is not constitutional. And it was something that made me sad. And then I saw your story about a school board that took a stand and overturned a policy that would have banned pride flags. And that made me feel a little better. Tell me about that story, Sean.
Yeah, so, I think the thing with Penridge, right, which is in part of Bucks County, which is a Collier County in Philadelphia, this was something that was a year in the making. The Democrats took the board. They were outnumbered, I think, 8-0 or 9-0 on the board. I don't think there was a single Democrat on there. They won 5 open seats in the 2023 election. And they were going after just repealing a lot of bad policies that the previous school board implemented. And a couple of those policies were book bans and also bans on like pride flags, almost like a "don't say gay" type of policy, where teachers weren't allowed to talk to students who might have been questioning their sexuality or their gender. And the previous school board labeled this as like an advocacy issue, and put a ban on it. And there has been pushback against this. And this issue came from an outside anti-LGBT organization. And I think it was a good example of showing what happens when a community pushes back against these right-wing school boards like Penridge. Before the 2023 election, they were completely controlled by QAnon conspiracy theorists.
Oh.
A couple of their school board members went to January 6th, and the community really galvanized and organized around that, and they were able to defeat the school board or install a brand new school board right during the 2023 election.
Wow. And that's really what it takes. It takes people paying attention. I live in an area that, as far as least our education policies, are pretty straightforward, pretty accepting. And a few years ago, we had a school board election, and I just thought, first of all, I was like, oh, my gosh, I don't live in an area where I have to worry about any of these crazies. But just to be a good citizen, I will look at some of the people running. And, Sean, 2 of the people running were right-wing crazies here in this area where you wouldn't ever expect that sort of thing to happen. And the signs were pretty good. Like, these two candidates, like, refused to answer any questions. They refused to fill out the candidate questionnaire. And then when you tried to Google them, one was associated with one of these groups. It didn't take a lot of energy on my part to unearth this, but you just have to look. You have to pay attention.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think, and also what we're seeing in Pennsylvania, this same organization, the Independence Law Center, they're connected to the Family Research Council, which is a right-wing national anti-LGBT organization that's labeled as an extremist organization nationally. And, I mean, you're seeing this type of pushback happening in all across Pennsylvania. I mean, Central York School District, which is, in deep red York County outside of Harrisburg, they were able to do the same thing a couple of years ago against the same actors who were, banning books. The Central York School Board, I think they banned the most books, I think, in 2022 or 2023, and they all got swept out of office.
Mm-hmm. What do you think made the difference? I mean, was what woke up folks? What made Democrats go after those 5 empty seats and win them? What was the motivation? It was like all of a sudden they woke up and wait a minute, these people are crazy. How did we let this happen? We've got to do something. Was it kind of like that?
I think people weren't. I'm not going to say people weren't paying attention, but you had an old crop of Republicans, in a deep Republican area, probably retire. This new crop came in, and people didn't realize how crazy that they were, and it took a lot of just organizing, knocking on doors, a lot of not in movement building, party building, that area, because of the school board going away, especially in Penridge, it spurred the local people to start a local Democratic club out there. To start a local Democratic Party, and to really just put the legwork in themselves.
I also want to talk to you. Oh, shoot. We should take a break. But when we come back, Sean, I want to talk to you about your article about the Pennsylvania American Civil Liberties Union branch and what they are planning to do to try to stand up against Donald Trump. I'm talking to Sean Kitchen from the Keystone, Courier News publication for Pennsylvania. We'll be right back after this.
Get social with WCPT 820 and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at WCPT 820.
WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
I'm joined by Sean Kitchen, who's a political correspondent at the Keystone. That is the Courier newsroom in Pennsylvania. And Sean wrote an article about the American Civil Liberties Union in Pennsylvania and what they were going to try to do to defend reproductive rights in a Trump administration. Sean, tell us about that, please.
So this is actually a national plan that the ACLU is preparing across the country to challenge and to protect reproductive rights. But in Pennsylvania, really what this article focused on was that reproductive rights and abortion access remains legal in Pennsylvania and will remain legal. But, they're looking to find ways into protecting reproductive health care for people coming in out of state. Pennsylvania, even though we have restrictions on abortion when it comes to a waiting period and other type of, roadblocks, essentially, they're preparing to protect that right here in Pennsylvania and across the country.
Interesting. I think that those kinds of measures are something the ACLU does really, really well. And a lot of people who voted for Donald Trump don't believe he's coming after abortion, Sean, because that's what he said. And you might not have heard this, Sean, but he is actually the father of in vitro fertilization. Did you not know those things, Sean?
I did not. I mean, I heard during the campaign that he was also the protector of women a couple of times, too.
Whether or not they want to be protected. That was my favorite part, Sean.
Yeah, the stuff that he was saying in the throughout the campaign. Yeah, I mean, I don't understand how that happened, but it did with Trump winning re-election. Like the reporting on it's just we'll just have to see how this goes and if he's going to go through with what was called for in Project 2025. I mean, Trump has placed people in place who are the architects of Project 2025. So I think we'll just have to wait and see if he goes with this.
Do you think me as a radio host, you as a journalist and reporter, did we somehow fail the audience? That because it seems like a lot of people who voted the Republican did so not really grasping the bigger picture of a man who had a plan to reshape the government of the United States. It was all this, prices are too high, I'm voting for him. I think the New Yorker described it as sort of they went for an information ambiance rather than actual information. What can we do about that, Sean?
I mean, I think we're just going to have to try and protect the communities that are going to be most affected by the second Trump administration, and really have to organize and find ways to connect and speak to those communities a lot more. I don't think the news or the media failed. I mean, or we failed in general. But I think the national media definitely gave Trump a pass on a lot throughout the campaign. I mean, there was things Trump was saying that was just absolutely off the hook the whole entire time. And Trump was able to get a pass with saying it while Harris was put under this fine-tooth comb.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you on that. And when Trump would make a speech and he would say crazy things or he would do something bizarre, it seemed to me, especially the New York Times, which just, I think, did a terrible job covering the campaign, they would pick out maybe the one sentence he said that made sense, and they would make it sound like that was what the whole presentation was about. This, he's going to do this about that. And, not the fact that, he was, seemingly didn't know where he was or thought he was in a different city or in a different state or all these other things that I think Joe Biden would have been pilloried for. I really think. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think we went months with hearing about Biden's mental capacity or not being with it, while Trump was just rambling on at these speeches for an hour, 2 hours at a time, making no sense at all and just saying stuff. And, people were just giving him a pass on it. And we never heard once about Trump's potential cognitive decline, which I think was, on display while he was in Pennsylvania, while he had a 45-minute episode just standing still, swaying back and forth, bobbing to music.
Yeah, if Joe Biden had gone to make a speech and said, nobody wants to hear a speech today, let's just play music, and then danced very badly, I will say, danced around for 38 minutes, I mean, it would have been, not only would it have been front page news, there would have been 5 different reporters covering all the different angles on it. I really do think, I don't know why. I don't know if they were afraid of Republicans. I don't know if they're secret closet Republicans and really wanted him to get elected. But nobody seemed at the national level to report the stakes. This wasn't just a horse race. This wasn't 2 normal candidates. This was a candidate who's normal versus somebody who really wants to be a dictator and has a plan called Project 2025 for how to gut the government. It was just extraordinary to me.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you. It was just something to Yeah, it was just really infuriating. And also, I think another thing that's happening here in Pennsylvania, also around the country, we have a lot of media consolidation going on. The week before the election or 2 weeks before the election, our NPR affiliate, or WITF, they closed shop and fired they didn't close shop, but they fired a lot of their reporters just as like in the middle of debate season was going on. And that was, I think we're seeing issues with media consolidation happening locally and also stuff at the national level.
Yeah, it doesn't do anybody any good. And I do think there's going to be a rise of independent media, kind of like the Courier newsrooms. And, man, it just can't come fast enough. Hey, give me an update on John Fetterman. How's that going? How's he doing?
To be honest, I think Fetterman has embraced some of Trump's picks for his secretary, the Trump's cabinet. He said he's willing to support Mehmet Oz, who he defeated in 2022. If Oz, vows to protect Social Security, he has called for Trump to be pardoned with regards to the documents case and the hush money trial up in New York City. So, I think we're starting to see a bit of a right-wing pivot from Fetterman.
Why?
I am not sure. I don't know if he's reading the tea leaves and just wants to be friends with the people coming in power, or he has his own political aspirations in 2028 to potentially run for president and maybe run as more as a populist in the sense of someone who can win votes from the MAGA crowd and from the Democrats.
Yeah, I don't know, that idea of positioning yourself to draw on those two constituencies did not work out well for Kyrsten Sinema. Somebody might want to point that out to Mr. Fetterman, that her idea that somehow if she rebuked Joe Biden, that she'd still have the Democrats in her corner, but she'd get all these MAGAs loving her well. Yeah, I don't know.
It's going to be, we're going to need Fetterman to really step up over the next few years to represent Pennsylvania and do the job that Casey was able to do. Because, we're losing probably one of the most influential U.S. senators, definitely in my lifetime. And probably, before Casey, you had someone like Specter and you had Hines, who was a Republican. I know, Casey's going to be regarded in that class of some of the most influential historical senators in the state's history.
Well, let's hope John Fetterman does step up because, he's been somebody who I've admired. But if he's going to Joe Manchin on us, then I'm going to break up with him, Sean.
Yeah, it's something that's been happening for a bit with Fetterman. But he's picking his battles. He has been going after the progressive base a bit in Pennsylvania. And I know he wants to run for president in 28, or Politico is just putting it out there. And he's going to be on the closing chorus with running against Shapiro in 28 too.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah. There's a dynamic there, maybe in California, between Harris and Newsom. There's that same dynamic here in Pennsylvania with two of the biggest competing politicians.
Ooh, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I will expect you to come back a lot in 2025 and give us updates, okay, Sean?
Definitely.
Sean Kitchen writes for the Keystone, a Courier publication that covers Pennsylvania. That is going to do it for me today. I want to let you know that Patty's going to be here very shortly. Dwayne Kennedy is going to co-host with her today, and that's always a lot of fun. Tomorrow, let's see, tomorrow's Friday. That means Richard Chu has Karen Byrne on of the True Blue Politics podcast. She joins him every Friday. And, of course, Richard always has the phone lines open. He loves to get calls, especially if you can be up at that hour of the morning. God love you. Tomorrow, I've got one of my favorite guests, and from the response, one of your favorite guests, too, Spencer Critchley. author of Patriots of Two Nations, is going to be joining us tomorrow. He has a new book, and very interestingly, rather than just writing it up and publishing it, he is releasing his newest political book in chapters. I believe the first and second chapter are out. So we are going to be talking to Spencer about what he has written in his new book. So I hope you will join us for that. I know Spencer is always somebody that I get a really good response to when he is here. Okay, kids, that's going to do it for me. I hope you have a great evening. Find your Zen place. Tonight's a good night to figure out what it is you're going to do over the weekend that is going to bring you joy. For me, this Saturday night, my book club is having a holiday party. What could be better? What could be better than that? So do that. Find something that you can look forward to. Find something that reminds you of who you are and who you love and what you care about. I will see you tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Have a great evening and good night.